So I shoot something with this lens for the first time and I put it on DaVinci and my jaw dropped. This is the Laowa Nanomorph 28-55 1.5x t2.9 anamorphic zoom, and this is the amber flare version, by the way. And before I go any further, can we just take a minute to appreciate that we don't have just one, but two anamorphic zoom lenses that are in the more budget category. So I reached out to Laowa because I'm doing a couple of projects, and I asked them if I could borrow a lens, and they were kind enough to say yes. So this is not a sponsored video. I unfortunately do not get to keep this lens, although I would like to keep this lens, but unfortunately that cannot happen. I'm gonna again do a kind of a deep dive like last week's FX30 video, so here are timestamps so you can jump around if you want, but of course I would love to see you stick around for the whole video, but I also understand if you want to jump around. One thing I want to do differently in this video though, I want to talk about everything, but at the end of every point I want to give two perspectives into this. One is going to be, let's say, the working perspective. It's going to be seeing this lens as a workhorse, zoomable, anamorphic lens that has cleaner characteristics, that is great for jobs that require a clean aesthetic, a cleaner anamorphic aesthetic, and that fits into the projects that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And that is going to be our working perspective. The second perspective is going to be my personal view on anamorphics, which I like barrel distorted anamorphics. I like kind of crazier anamorphics, but I like the organized chaos in some way. So not quite the Panavision C stuff, but not quite like super new Panavision T type of stuff. It's kind of like in the middle, which I always say it's kind of like Atlas Mercury stuff, but that is where my personal love for anamorphics lie. And both of these perspectives, I think, the context that these perspectives gives is really important when we're talking about anything. Like it could be a lens, it could be a camera, it could be anything. Context is everything, so I hope this will help. And with this out of the way, let's answer the question. Again, context is very important in this sense, so I want to talk about the projects that I got this lens for, and then you can have a better understanding of this like working perspective. So I'm shooting in the next over the next 2 months, I'm shooting 3 projects. One is going to be a mini doc. Normally, I'm not a doc shooter, but it's for a good cause. It's for a cause near to my heart. It is a local cafe that is an inclusive cafe and works with people with disabilities. And it's going to be a doc about that. It's for a good cause. And I wanted to give that doc an immersive look. And I wanted a cleaner immersive look, so that's where the anamorphics come in, that's where the Laowa anamorphics come in, and I wanted the distortion to have Pincushion distortion, which was not my personal style, but very, very, very crucial to the project, because I know some of the stories that are going to be told, and I wanted them to feel like something in the visual style. And the 2 spec ads that I'm shooting, one is going to be about a mascara, and the second one is going to be a lifestyle kind of ad. So both of them require an immersive but a cleaner look, and I wanted close focus for both of them, which was really important for the couple of shots that I have in mind, a couple of shots that I have in my boards. So this was why I reached out to Laowa, and again, they were kind enough to say yes. So let's go. So this lens, like I've said 3 times now, is an anamorphic zoom lens that has a range between 28mm and 55mm. It has a constant aperture of t2.9. It has a constant squeeze of 1.5 times, and it covers Super 35 sensors. This lens excels in 2 things, which is going to be really important, which is a cleaner but still immersive anamorphic look with still anamorphic characters, and close focus, which is something that normally anamorphic lenses are not good at, but this lens excels in. And one more thing before we get to the image quality and stuff is squeeze factors. This lens has a constant squeeze factor of 1.5x, which means if you move through the ranges of like 28 to 55 or close focus to infinity focus, the squeeze factor does not change. And one really important thing about squeeze factor is the sensor size of the camera, because this will determine how we crop, or if we even crop the footage. And this will also determine how much of the character are we losing, or how much of the character are we not losing. I'm shooting with the FX30, and everything that you will see in this footage and the projects that I'm going to shoot with are going to be with my FX30, which shoots in a 16:9 mode. 16:9 sensor with a 1.5 times anamorphic means that that 16, that width of your image, is going to multiply it by 1.5x, which would give us 24 by 9, and that would translate to 2.67 to 1 aspect ratio. If you want to crop into an anamorphic delivery, which would be 2.4 to 1, you would be cutting out these edges, which means that you're losing all that edge character. If you're delivering in 2 to 1, which means you're losing even more of that edge character, and if you crop to 16 by 9, I mean you're losing a lot of that edge character. And this is where a lot of people come in and say, if you're shooting anamorphics, it is best to shoot with a camera that has open gate capabilities or at least anamorphic modes. For example, an open gate camera could record in 3:2 aspect ratio, and this 3:2 combined with a 1.5x anamorphic means that you're getting a native 2.25 to 1 aspect ratio. So when you crop it to 2.4 to 1, it would look like this. When you crop it to 2 to 1, it would look like this. And when you crop it to 16 by 9, it would look like this. This means you're losing a lot less of that edge character. Now, there are a lot more anamorphic modes in some cinema cameras like Red cameras or Pixis. Like there's like 4:3, which there is 6:5 anamorphic modes. This is a very important point because everything that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to overlay a crop overlay. So you can see what the 2.4 to 1 looks like, you can see what 2 to 1 looks like, and 16 by 9 looks like. Because again, since this is a 16 by 9 sensor, we're losing a lot of that edge character. Like even now, you're not seeing a lot of those edges. It is an important point. We're going to talk about more coming minutes, but I wanted to let you know about this right now because again, we're going to see some overlays and we're going to take a look at all the results. Body design is real nice. I always make a big point of design because it holds an emotional value to me. I've mentioned this too many times before, but I've studied architecture and design and worked as one. So I hold like really emotional value, and I give a lot of emotional value to design because if something looks cool, feels good, and looks good, it really gives me this like, oh, I really want to use this. The fonts are nice, the design of it, the color of it is nice. The amber color is really nice. I'm really in love with that color. About the body design, nothing to say. It's a cinema build. It is a pretty hefty build. It is completely metal. It weighs about 1.5 kilograms, which is 3.3 pounds. It does have a lens support, so you can run lens support on this. I don't know if you would have to run it. I'm kind of the angsty type when it comes to lens support things, so I'm running a lens support on this. Like, I don't know. I feel better at least, but you might not have to, or you might not want to. So I guess, yeah. The image quality that you're getting out of this lens is really great. Like colors that you're looking at are great. There is no like, oh my God, it's super tinted. Oh my God, it's super cool or warm thing going on. There's maybe tiny little bit more magenta to the image, but it is very little. Like at this point, I'm super pixel peeping, and I don't think that's a problem at all. And I always like comparing lenses that I get to Tamron 17 to 70 lens, but it has kind of become my base point of a lens that where I say, okay, it's a bit warm or it's a bit cold, or like to test the sharpness and stuff because it's a very sharp and neutral lens. And I have a feeling that the colors are a bit deeper, a bit richer, but I might be completely wrong, and this might be a complete placebo thing because I really like the lens. I don't know, but you're seeing the images, so you can decide for yourself too. Say a word. The contrast is really great. Even at like wide open at T2.9, you're getting really nice contrast. The micro contrast in that 3D pop that we're talking about is also there. I like to compare this micro contrast and 3D pop thing to the Helios 44 because I think that is a lens that has really nice 3D pop micro contrast qualities to it, and I think this one compares well. Although I will say, as you move towards T2.9 to T4 to T5.6 to T8, contrast does get maybe a little bit better, but like this is very like we're really pixel peeping right now. Till your guilt creeps in. Editing me here, I have seen that I forgot to talk about highlight roll-off, which is a very important thing. Highlight roll-off is a combination of micro contrast and halation and blooming on the lens, kind of like the same in cameras. You know, we take a look at how the highlight rolls off, and I have to say this highlight roll-off of this lens is really incredible. Yes, highlight roll-off does have a lot to do with the camera too, but again, it has also a lot to do with the lens too. If we were to take a look at my arm here or my skin tones here or even the background, you can see how nice and a poppy highlight roll-off is there, which is really gentle, very, very, very pleasing to my eye. From both working perspective and the personal perspective, I think the contrast, the color accuracy, the 3D pop is really great. There is quite a bit of chromatic aberration, especially at wide open. You are getting quite a bit of that red on the front of the autofocus areas, and then teal and greenish fringing on the backside of the focal plane. It does get better when you stop to T4, T5.6, or T8, but I personally find chromatic aberration very tasty. And the thing about this is, what I like with the chromatic aberration is in the front of the focal plane, red, but like with orange hues in that color, and because I think that kind of feels like a bit of like halation, and it gives kind of a cool warmth to the image. And on the back of the focal plane, I really like that like green teal-ish color, and I'm very, very happy to report that this lens really does this. All lenses are different in this point, because some of them show some more greenish fringing than like green teal, or they show more of that magenta fringing than the red orange fringing that I'm talking about. So I'm really happy that this really fits into my own view, but in general, I do understand why it might be a little too much for some people. So in that working perspective, I would say yes, T2.9 could be a little too much, but again, could, because this is also a very like personal preference thing. And then personally, in my own opinion, I really like it. Like I really, really enjoy the colors that I'm getting now. As I do. The sharpness point was a quite surprising result to me, because I did not really think that it would be super sharp at T2.9. I expected it to be soft, but like a stylistic soft, not like too soft. And I'm very pleased to report that it does have some really good sharpness to it. Like even at wide open at T2.9, I don't see the need to sharpen it or say, oh, okay, let's stop down to T4 because it's way too soft. And at like even some points, like I shot a showcase video, which I'll link in the description and probably around here too. And in that video, I even softened that, and like the sharpness was enough for me. If we move through the ranges of like T2.9, T4, T5.6, and T8, we can see that it does get better, especially around the edges. The sharpness does get better, but it's not where I'm like, oh my God, it's too soft. And I've done a test shoot for this mini doc that I'm shooting, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to show frames. If I can, I've already shown you. If I can't, I'm just going to have to show you my test frames. And I'm just going to have to say, trust me, bro. Director client didn't have any issues with the sharpness at all. And this is where also the sensor sharpness come in, which I've talked about in the last FX30 video. I really like the sharpness that is coming out of the FX30, because it doesn't feel too soft, but it doesn't feel like overly sharp. It would be like, if this is middle, I would put it like just right above middle sharpness. If this is too sharp and this is too soft. So I think this really balances that a little softness that's coming out of Nanomorph very well. If we were to compare it to the Tamron 17-70 lens, yes, there's a little bit of that like softness that's coming into the image, but it does not really not look like, oh my God, it's soft. I'm very pleased with the result. From both working perspective and the personal perspective, I am very surprised, and I am very happy to say that both of those perspectives, the sharpness is really great. Bird flies by and you forget. Focusing is a bit of a thing, so I wanted to make a whole category on this. This lens, again, excels in close focus, which it has a close focus distance of 0.45 meters, which I'm going to talk about close focus in a second. But I want to talk about focusing in general. It has a very nice focus ring, like 270 degrees from close focus to infinity. But the thing about this is, since this excels in close focus, the 70% of that focus range is between 0.45 meters to 1.5 meters, which means after that 1.5, or like let's say 2 meters, you're getting a very strong, maybe like 30% of that range, and very strong fall off to the infinity, which is something that I've realized, because I tend to, with this lens, go at least like 35 to 43 millimeters, and then the subject is sitting about 2 meters away. And I would like to have that background blur a little bit more, you know, that immersiveness, that like that oval bokeh. And this is where I realized, it might not be the best in those scenarios. But again, this is not something that I would say, oh my God, it's bad, because again, this lens excels in close focus that the other lenses don't do. If I were to put this in an example, we can take a look at the Remus, because Remus has a close focus of 0.7 meters, which is worse than this lens. And after that, you are getting precise focus until even 5 meters or like 4 meters. So that range of like 1.5 meters to 4 meters is still more precise than what you're getting with the Nanomorph Zoom. Again, Not a bad thing, but a comparison I think that is good to be made. This lens excels in close focus and Remus doesn't, and they're not in the same category, I would say, but something to note. After 4 meters, Remus goes out to 4, 5, 7, 10, and 25, and then infinity. This one has 5, 8, 10, infinity. 3, 5, 10, and then infinity. And this one has 3, 5, and 10, and then infinity. There is quite a bit of focus breathing, but not in a, oh my god, it's too ugly or anything like that. And the squeeze factor doesn't change when you're focusing from close focus to infinity, which is something to note that is really important, because for me, for my own taste, when the squeeze factor changes throughout the focus range, it kind of gives me this wobbly effect, which I'm not quite a fan of, and this doesn't do that. That is something that I really appreciate. I think focus breathing kind of gives a sense of depth to an image. I'm not saying like a huge amount of focus breathing, but a good amount of focus breathing I think gives a cool depth, cool life to an image. From both perspectives, nothing to complain about. So the thing about focus falloff is focus falloff could be its own character in a scenario, in a shot. If you have a like super strong focus falloff where the transition is not too gentle, it can be, or like the falls off and it swirls, it can be a character of its own. This is not a bad thing. This is something that I really, really enjoy. And this helps to lead your eye to the focus point in a very, very gentle way. A very good example of this is my wide angle adapter actually, because it has a very strong and very fast focus fall off, and that transition is not super gentle. It is very fast, but something that I really quite enjoy. With this one though, the focus fall off that you're getting is a lot different than what you would be getting with the wide angle adapter or anything else, because it does still have focus fall off. Like my hand here is still sharp. I hope I'm in focus. It's sharp. And as I move towards the edges, it does get softer. But the thing is, the transition between this soft and sharp area is so gentle and it's so pleasing. Normally, again, I'm into this organized chaos kind of a thing, this intentional rawness, I like to call it, and I like a bit of a strong fall off. But this is like so gentle, and it is really, for me, the definition of it leads your eye gently to the focus point, because it does it in such a gentle way. The transition. It's really great. The focus fall off does get better though, with T2.9 being the worst of the range, and then T4 gets a bit better, T5, 6 gets a bit better, and then T8 gets a bit better. In some working scenarios and some professional scenarios, I can see this being a little bit of a problem. People saying, oh my god, why are the edges not sharp? Is this like 360p or something? It could happen, especially in like corporate scenarios, but personally, and like in an artistic view, I guess, I don't see it as a problem. I quite like that. And again, this transition is so gentle. I really like it. This thing has crazy close focus, right? 0.45 meters. You're getting really close to the subject, and with 28 millimeters to 55 millimeters across the zoom range, this does not change, which means at 55 millimeters, you're getting a crazy close focus. I'm not gonna say like macro, but you're getting really good close focus. You can really get cray, and you can really get like super cool shots with this, which I'm really excited to try out, especially for that one spec ad, the mascara ad that I've talked about, which you know what it is, like it's gonna be like from eye and stuff, like it's gonna be awesome. Also, one note in this, parfocalness with close focus is a dream combo. It's perfect. So I'm gonna throw out a hot take in the room. I'm not a big fan of anamorphic flares. Like, I'm not gonna say it like that. I like anamorphic flares. I like flares in general. I like quirky flares that has a, that shows a little bit of character, and I do play into flares too, and I enjoy them. But I think the anamorphic flares are a bit overhyped and overplayed, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I've seen too many J.J. Abrams films, but that's my take on the whole thing. And also, I don't like blue flares. I like silver and amber flares, and I really like the amber flares. It gives such a warmth to the image. With this lens, you're getting really good flares. They're not too subtle, but they're also not like in an overpowering way. This also depends on the light source and the angle that you're getting. into, but in general, you are getting, for my taste, really perfect flares. There are also like some secondary elements that's going on, some vertical elements in the right angle, and then the secondary horizontal flares do happen when the spotlight source is very hard and very strong. Now, I've also done some flashlight tests, which I know those tests can be weird, since in a real world scenario, you're probably not going to get flashlight stuff unless you're going like with a crime thing and then like someone's putting that stuff like this, then you are probably getting that flashlight stuff. But in general, that is why I still like to do these flashlight tests, but I also like to show some more practical examples in this. When the flashlight is not in a spotlight mode, in a completely open mode, you are getting pretty subtle flares, which I really enjoy. And when it goes into spotlight mode, you are getting stronger flares, but they are not overpowering and they do not take over the whole image. You don't get a lot of ghosting, you don't lose a lot of contrast, so I really like that. The color of the flare is so beautiful in my opinion, because again, I'm a fan of amber flares. I think they give a warmth to the image, the naturalistic quality that I look out an image, it just is there, so I really quite like that. At 28 millimeters, the flare does have a little bit of a distortion to it, which I quite enjoy, and the flare subtlety does not really change within the whole zoom range, which I quite like. From both working perspective and a personal perspective, I think they're really great. They're not too subtle, but they're also not overpowering. I think this flare, I think you're getting enough flare to call an image cinematic. So distortion is a big point for me personally, but let's take a look at the distortion for a second. At 28 millimeters, you are getting a little bit of that Pincushion distortion, but not a lot. But when you slowly zoom in to 35, to 43, or to 55, you are getting a lot more of that Pincushion distortion. And one of the things that I really enjoy about this distortion is it doesn't feel like it's taking over the whole image, of like that fishbowl effect doesn't really exist. That might also just be because of the barrel distortion, but this doesn't also feel like squishy or it's too changing and stuff like that. It doesn't really feel like that. And at 28 millimeters, you are getting really nice horizontal barrel distortion, but as you move towards the range of 28 to 55 millimeters, by the time you're at 40, you are losing a lot of that horizontal barrel distortion. But this is also where aspect ratio comes to play, because again, with the 16:9 sensor, you are getting 2.67 to 1 aspect ratio, which means you are pretty much losing all of that edge distortion, or maybe a little bit of that if you're in 55 millimeters, which is something, again, that I'm not quite a fan of, but this is not a fault of the lens. This is completely about the camera and the sensor and the shooting size. So something to note, but nothing that I hold against the lens or anything like that. As far as my personal view on distortion goes, I really like barrel distortion. And the fact that this doesn't have barrel distortion is a big point to me, because I always say, like, anamorphics for me are like 41% barrel distortion, 39% oval bokeh, and 10% focus falloff, sharpness, and the chromatic aberration. So the fact that this doesn't have that barrel distortion is kind of disappointing to me. But I also know in projects that to choose the right lens for the story and not let my personal feelings get in the way of the story being told. There's more of that philosophical conversation to be had of like, aren't you the person that decides? But again, this is why I went with this lens, because again, the projects that I wanted required less distortion, and that distortion to be a Pincushion distortion. And from that working perspective, I also know a lot of clients that don't want any distortion at all. This is a lot more in the corporate stuff, but they don't want to see that whole like thing. And when I give them an image like that, I always get like, why does this look like that? Which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but in general, they don't want to see that. That's my experience, at least in the whole thing. So from a working perspective, less distortion is good in kind of a way, especially for the corporate stuff. But from a personal perspective, the lack of barrel distortion is really is one thing that I don't really enjoy. Bokeh. Bokeh is a bit of a mixed bag. So let's take a look at the bokeh for a second. So this is a focus rack of 28 millimeters. The This is a focus rack of 35 millimeters. This is a focus rack of 43 millimeters. This is a focus rack of 55 millimeters. And this is the bokeh of a classic forest background. And you're getting really clean oval bokeh with a busy background like this. And this is really nice. Like, oh my God, it is like 9 out of 10, like near perfect for me. But the fact is, with not a busy background, you are not getting a lot of that smeariness in the background. If I were to compare this to Helios 44, around the edges, you're getting a bit more of that smeariness even, I would say, compared to this lens. I don't mean this in a bad way. I don't mean this in a good way either. I just mean to say what I found. For me personally, I would have loved to see a bit more of that smearness, but this is a clean anamorphic and I wanted to go for a cleaner anamorphic look, which is why I say this does very well in that thing, because the bokeh is still more immersive than a spherical bokeh, in my opinion, and you're still getting that ovalness, but you're not getting that smeariness of that background. Good thing or bad thing, you can decide. From a working perspective, from these projects perspective, this is something that I really enjoy because this is a really big opportunity for a lot of people, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But from my personal perspective, if the project was right, if I wasn't going for a project look, I would have loved to see that smeary background and going a little more swirl even on the edges. So that's something. But again, from these projects perspectives, it's really good. Now, the ibis and rolling shutter point in general does not have anything to do with the lens, and it has everything to do with the camera. But I think it's important to talk about it since I'm talking about this lens paired with the FX30, because more rolling shutter in anamorphic stuff can look a little bit of weird because of this whole like widening of the image. It might have some weird wobbly effects. FX30 in a like whip pan environment, and not just a whip pan, but in a whip pan situation or in a fast pan situation, you do see some uncanniness. But in a handheld situation with 55 millimeters, which that showcase I shot was just with handheld and 55 millimeters mostly, you don't really see that, you don't really feel that, which is something that I really enjoy. But again, this point is completely about the camera, and this will change with every other camera. So nothing about the lens, but something that is important to note. So there's this thing of like vertical anamorphic that's coming into more play over the last couple of years, and over the last couple of months it has even gotten more popular, which is something that I have not experimented a lot with. Again, with the showcase that I did shoot some vertical anamorphic stuff, but there is different stuff that could happen with vertical anamorphic. So you can actually do two ways of vertical anamorphics. You can turn the camera 90 degrees, like in a vertical sense, and then the anamorphic lens stays the same, like in a horizontal normal view. Or you can turn just the lens and then the camera stays the same, because these two give different results. So normal camera, 16:9 sensor, and anamorphic turn 90 degrees will give you 16:13.5, which would mean a 1.18 to 1 aspect ratio. And if you turn the camera around and the anamorphic stays the same, then you would be getting a 13.5 to 16 aspect ratio, which would be 0.85 to 1 aspect ratio. Of course, depending on how you use it, your direction of the flares will change, direction of the bokeh will change. So there's a lot more experimenting and testing to be done, which I will do. And I want to make a whole nother video about this, but it is something that I wanted to talk about right now. But again, more testing and more experiments will be done, and I will report back happily. Everything about that working perspective will lead into this point, because let me tell you this, when I'm not doing this camera stuff, when I'm not on set or coloring or YouTube or anything like that, I have another job. I have a day job, which is in 3D industry. I work as a 3D visualization artist for architects and product designers, and I kind of like do not a lot of modeling, but a lot of like 3D cinematography, 3D photography, and animating the camera movements and the camera settings and stuff like that, which means I have access to any lens that you could think of in the world, because you can emulate any lens, any camera, anything. We as a company work with a lot of corporations of, like, again, architects and designers. They usually want immersive images that still have some emotion to it, but they don't want that anamorphic problems that I tend to like. That means when I go to them with a Panavision C style anamorphic look, I get back
Why the hell does this look like this?
Why are those edges not straight? Isn't this digital?
Stuff like that, I really do get that. But when I go to them with a lens like Nanomorph, with cleaner anamorphic look, but still that immersive bokeh, then I get kudos. And then I get, whoa, that feels really good. And this is where I want to talk about this opportunity of there is a world, I think, where this lens could make us more money. It's something that not a lot of people like to talk about, especially about this like business stuff and like money stuff. But I think this lens offers us some great qualities that would do great in these cleaner anamorphic jobs that would give us the edge a little bit more, where I can say, hey, this is how I stand out because I'm still giving you a cleaner image, but a little bit more immersiveness to the image. This is where I can charge more for my work than my normal work with a spherical lens maybe. This is where I can say, look, I'm giving you a more cinematic feel. If we're talking like doc stuff, like docs usually don't go for anamorphic stuff, but this is a clean anamorphic look and it zooms. So it lends itself great to even those situations. It lends itself great to some corporate stuff where you just have to take one lens and one camera and you're still getting that immersive look, that cinematic look. So I think there are endless opportunities that will be opened with, that can be opened with this lens, which I kind of expected this to be like this. Because again, my job is kind of doing the same thing in a digital environment. So that is why I was able to decide I really want to get a look like this. And now that I get it, I think this confirms that stuff. I have to use it in a corporate sense to say, okay, this really does work well with like super corporate clients. But again, I think this could open so many doors to us, especially in this corporate world, because I know not a lot of people love doing that stuff. You know, I don't enjoy doing that stuff, but it does pay the bills. It does pay my rent. It allows me to get this camera. So just because we don't like something doesn't mean we're not going to make a good job out of it. And if something like this, a lens like this could set us apart in that whole world, I think that's a great opportunity. From a working perspective, a really good opportunity to make more money, to stand out from the crowd, a really good immersive look that doesn't have the anamorphic problems, and it's a really, really good look. It's a good workhorse lens, great build, great handleability, everything. From a personal point of view, it doesn't scratch the itch of that smeary background and that barrel distortion, but again, it opens up so many more doors with the close focus, with, again, the zoom capabilities of an anamorphic lens, and the business opportunities. At the end of the day, though, I am these two perspectives coming together in me. I am a combination of these two perspectives, which means I choose a lens that is right for the project, even though my personal view could be something else. Now, there's, again, a whole philosophical conversation to be had about this whole thing, because you can say, but this is my style. I'm not going to go into that right now because, again, that's a whole nother video. That's a whole nother conversation that could go hours and hours long. At the end of the day, this lens is a clean lens, close focus. It is a great lens, great build, immersive lens. And in general, I don't really have anything negative to say about it, because I've given you all the facts. I've given myself all the facts, so I can also decide after I watch the video too. It is a great lens, and I'm gone too far now to send this back. So Harper, if you're watching this, let me keep this lens. Like, nobody has to know that it has to go back. I can't ship it, but you know, a lot of stuff can happen in transport. Talking about opportunity, vertical, ibis, bokeh, flares, parfocalness, distortion, close focus, focus, falloff, focus, breathing. Everything. I think this is nice. Okay. At the end of the day, I really like the lens. I really enjoy it. Okay, you know what? That's done. That's done. We're good. Good to go.